and let us all do we can to build a better future. Joe Biden's administration has been extremely harsh on free speech. And I think all of us need to be concerned about what's going to be happening further on down the road in regards towards, well, how we use social media. I said on the show before that we need to be worried about what this administration is doing, how much this administration is on a super fast rush for censorship. And I said that it was going to get bad, but I didn't expect it to get this bad. So I want to pull up these tweets from Representative Jim Jordan. And let's talk about it, because apparently they want to twist the arm of Elon Musk and Twitter. Let's pull up this video here for all of you.
Why are you harassing Twitter?
Congressman, thanks for the question. As you might know, the FTC's work on Twitter goes back a decade. Back in 2000,
I'm not talking about a decade. I'm talking about now. 12 demand letters in 10 weeks, over 350 separate requests you've demanded of Twitter. Why are you harassing them?
Twitter has a history of lax security and privacy policies.
That's a weak excuse, and we all know it. What they're upset about is that the current people or the former people who used to run Twitter are no longer at the beck and call of the administration. And look, I am critical of Elon Musk, of how he's been running Twitter too. But the way this administration wants to control everything should frighten you. There's no lesser or greater evil here, okay? But the way this presidential administration wants to silence, censor, and suppress, we saw what happened in 2020 about the Hunter Biden laptop story. We saw firsthand what's happened to a lot of independent media content creators on all the social media platforms. No administration should be in control of the social media platforms. No administration should dictate who can speak and who should not speak. And yet this administration, with the probably push and assistance from AOC and other Congressional Progressive Caucus members, they want to control what you guys are allowed to see and think and hear. Because, you know, you can't be critical of liberals or Democrats, because that's just hate speech.
You've asked for every single communication relating to Elon Musk, not communications that he just sent to someone or some communications he received, but anytime he's mentioned, that actually seems more than harassment. That seems like almost an obsession. Why such an intense focus?
So, Congressman, again, it was found that Twitter's lax privacy policies allowed unauthorized users to co-opt Twitter accounts, including that of Fox News. Subsequently, Twitter voluntarily entered into a consent order with the FTC.
Here's what you wrote in December, Madam Chair. Here's what you wrote in December. Identify all journalists and other members of the media to whom Twitter has granted access since Musk bought the company.
They want the list of journalists that Elon Musk gave access to in regards to the Twitter files. So we all know our good friend Matt Taibbi, who was threatened by our also wonderful politicians. Hey, Mehdi Hassan, what's it like following orders? Because, you know, hey, if you reveal the Twitter files and share them, which are factually correct, oh no, MSNBC or BSDNC, as I like to call them, guess what? You guys aren't good at your job, and Matt Taibbi just schooled all of you.
You want to know the name of every journalist a private company has talked to? Think that's consistent with the First Amendment?
Congressman, as a former journalist, I take extremely...
So she's a sellout. That's true. She wants the names of... Give us the names of the journalists and follow orders. Again, remember, folks, about dictatorships and fascism, it comes in many forms. It's just not the standard bald-headed white guy. Sometimes it'll surprise you what form it takes.
Here's what you wrote in December. Identify all journalists and other members of the media to whom Twitter has granted access since Musk bought the company. You want to know the name of every journalist a private company has talked to? Think that's consistent with the First Amendment?
Congressman, as a former journalist, I take extremely seriously the valuable work that they do and understand that there can be instances in which government action is unjustifiably...
Particularly, Madam Chair, if I could just interject, particularly in the context here, I mean, it's bad enough if you got government asking a private company about who are the journalists you're talking to. You name 4 of them and say, we want the other names of any journalists you may in fact be communicating with. That's bad enough.
And that is frightening. That should not be allowed at all. And no administration should have that power. Democrat, Republican, dare I say it, Green, Libertarian, or whoever should not have that power to demand the names of journalists.
I think a threat to the First Amendment, freedom of the press. But in the context of giving us information about how government had suppressed speech on these platforms, that's the context you're asking for. I think that's particularly troubling, don't you?
Congressman, the consent decree that we have prohibits Twitter from sharing personal information with third parties. When
Denver Attaway on Rockfin. This woman is the perfect example of evil wrapped up in a harmless looking dumb broad. Well, okay. Could be a little bit more family friendly, but like I said, folks, evil comes in many forms. It will surprise you.
we read in the papers, like everybody else, that Twitter may have granted access to third parties. That's what our teams were seeking information about. Again, this is a company whose history with the FTC goes
Madam
back
Chair,
a decade.
we got limited time. Madam Chair, who is David Roque?
Could you repeat that, Congressman?
David Roque, R-O-Q-U-E. Who is David Roque?
I'm not familiar with
You
that.
deposed him last month, June 21st, 2023. David Roque is the independent partner for Ernst & Young's independent assessment of Twitter's program. That's part of this consent decree. You know what Mr. Roque said in that deposition?
I'm not aware.
Okay.
She should be aware, but she's not.
Let me read it for you then, because I think it's pretty important. Mr. Roque testified, again, one of your lawyers, you deposed him, testified that FTC's conduct made him feel as if the FTC was trying to influence the outcome of the engagement before it had started. He said, in some of the discussions that we were having with the Federal Trade Commission, expectations were being conveyed about what those results should be before we had even begun any procedures. So they're the independent assessor in this consent decree the FTC has with Twitter, and you're telling the guy who is the person. He's the guy. He's Joe the accountant who's going to get this information. You're telling him, you're putting your finger on the scale, telling him what you want the outcome to be, and he's supposed to be the independent fact finder. Why are you doing that?
Congressman, I'm not familiar with those.
Because of
You're not familiar? Is that not you? Are those not your transcripts? Huh?
just filed today, but we are. This is filed in court today, and this is your deposition.
I'm happy to take a closer look at it and be back in touch. I will say as a general matter, we want to make sure that the assessors and auditors that are responsible for overseeing compliance are doing their job.
You say Mr. Roque's line, what he testified here, what's been filed in court today, that there were suggestions of what they would expect the outcome to be, they being the FTC, there were suggestions of what they wanted him to go find in his independent assessment of the consent decree agreement between the FTC and Twitter.
Again, I'm happy to take a close look and we can be back.
You see, so again, she's afraid to answer. She's afraid to speak out. And I wanted to play this video just a little bit longer so we hear more of Jim Jordan's answers or questions. Because again, look, accountability. Something that this administration, the Biden-Harris administration, just can't do.
Back in touch with you about that allegation, but our staff are consummate professionals.
And yes, she does reek of media training. And again, the audacity of all of this should concern all of you.
When they conduct these investigations, they're focused on determining
Did you go after,
whether there was a violation.
is your attack on Twitter, harassment on Twitter, is that based on the fact that all kinds of Democrats have asked you to do this and frankly, some things that you've written about dealing with, quote, disinformation? Does that have anything to do with it, Ms. Khan?
Congressman, we make only independent determinations about whether there were law violations.
So in other words, what you're hearing here is word salads. Happy to look at. I'll look into that. I didn't really know, but I'll look into it further. No accountability. I can answer these questions, but let me give you a word salad with words.
The statement from Chairman Nadler, the statements from the letter, the press release and the letter from 7 Democrat senators that had no impact on it, that's not why you're doing it.
Absolutely not. We look very closely at the specific matter at hand. Again,
12 demand letters in 10 weeks telling the independent assessor, hey, put your finger on the scale. This is the results we want. That's not harassment, and it had nothing to do with the fact that every Democrat in this town seemed to be telling you to go after Twitter.
Our focus is on protecting people's privacy and security. Twitter has sensitive data on 150 million Americans, including private messages. We need to make sure, especially given its history going all the way back to...
Oh, so again, the administration has to look into your own private messages. They want to spy in on you, and they want to think for you. Don't think for yourself. Let us do the thinking for you.
2010, we're doing everything to make sure Twitter is complying with the order.
By the way, that is a lot of water. 3 water bottles? Dang, lady, what are you, a plant?
That's fine. Don't put your finger on the scale and don't attack the First Amendment and the rights of journalists.
Mr. Chairman,
That I yield back.
I want to pull up one other video here as well. Again, that's very concerning.
FTC attorney deposing Mr. Roque asked him to confirm that, quote, no one from the FTC directed you to reach a particular conclusion about Twitter's program. He explained to the contrary. There were suggestions of what they would expect the outcome to be. He testified that the FTC communicated to Ernst & Young. Again, Ernst & Young is the independent assessor, the fact finder that the FTC selected and made Twitter pay for, that he communicated to Ernst & Young that, quote, Ernst & Young under all circumstances will be conducting and issuing a report on behalf of the FTC order, and was very adamant about this is absolutely what you will do, and this is going to occur, and you will produce a report at the end of the day. The FTC was so adamant. Ernst & Young leaders feared that the FTC would take exception if they chose to withdraw from the case. So on the one hand, you're harassing Twitter, and then you're saying the guy we've selected, the entity we've selected, Ernst & Young, the accountant we've selected to be the fact finder, you better find what we want. And if you try to get out of it, we're going to retaliate against you. That is frightening. I mean, we talk about the weaponization of government. This from the same agency that said, tell us all the journalists you're talking to. That's what we're concerned about, Ms. Khan. That's what has to change.
Now, again, I've said on the show that the censorship is all too real. We here have dealt with it. A lot of our colleagues in independent media has dealt with it. It's not only on YouTube, but Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the social media platforms. These are concerning issues. And the fact that this administration has been on a super fast rush for censorship should concern you all. And Hardlands Media, we've been around since 2017. We started way back in the day with the Galaxy S7 cell phone on the streets of Chicago. Going up from radio to having a public access TV show to now being here on the internet. Let me just tell you something, folks. It has gotten intensively worse under this administration than it was under the 4 years of Donald Trump. The censorship is on overdrive. You got to be careful what you say, how you cover a story or an event. Independent media is being put on a chopping block. Free speech is being put on a chopping block. You know, again, all the times that we were given a strike or censored on YouTube, all of it happened under a Democratic administration, by the way, as have all of our colleagues in independent media, be they libertarians, progressives, non-affiliate. A lot of people have been put on that chopping block.
You can comment if you want, but I'm reading from the motion filed today in court. And it's amazing to me. You don't even know this guy. You don't even know who this person is. And your lawyers deposed him. He's the guy that you set up as the fact finder, and you didn't know who he was. Did you sign off on any of those 12 letters sent to Twitter in that 10-week time frame?
Hey, this is the face of accountability.
Congressman, we're fortunate to have a lot of work underway. A lot of this
Happy to have a lot of work. Happy to do all this.
work is delegated to the frontline staff that are able to move quickly and nimbly to make sure.
Yeah, but you're in front of Congress today, and you knew you're going to get questions about this. Yeah, you don't know this. I find amazing.
It sounds like it was a late-breaking development in a filing this morning. It's not something that's on my radar. I'd be reluctant to weigh in on it in this setting without looking more closely at it. Happy to take questions for the record on it and engage later.
Uh-huh. So in other words, she's like, I gotta work out my lie, so that way nothing comes down on me.
Not on your radar that you told, based on the testimony of this guy, that he felt there would be retaliation if Ernst & Young tried to get out of the agreement. Wow.
I yield back.
Wow. Wow, indeed. Get more water. Chop, chop. So, look, I may not agree with a lot of these politicians, but Jim Jordan, he's saying some things that should concern you guys and gals. But the fact that this administration wants to twist the arm of Elon Musk and have control, more power, more say. The Twitter files revealed so much. And look, they did the same thing to Facebook, too. Keep your heads on a swivel. The internet censorship is only going to intensify. I hope I'm wrong, though. I want to be wrong. I want there to be a day where independent media is no longer being censored or chained. But unfortunately, we have politicians, majority of whom are Democrats, that want to control free speech. That has to stop.